We were hearing from the US Energy Secretary earlier on. He was talking about the challenges that California faces, having made the switch to 100% renewables. He was very critical of the decisions they've made around the baseload. Do you think that, but what I've just read there clearly suggests there's a lot of investor appetite for renewable energy and for cleaner energies right now. For places like California struggling with these decisions and blackouts that have followed, what does the future of energy policy need to look like?
I think that the policy needs to be what we would call a just transition. So there is no reason to not transition away from fossil fuels because that is the way that things are going. And we've got to move in that direction. And California has been hit by these horrible forest fires year after year. So I can completely understand why they don't want to be associated with something that is contributing to these natural disasters. However, there has to be a just transition, and most sustainable investors would agree that we can't have a situation where we go from one technology and that is contributing to forest fires, but go from another technology which is then contributing to blackouts. There has to be some sort of middle ground. And I think with some of the statements that have been made earlier, that middle ground could be struck by having cleaner base loads, as well as eventually moving to 100% renewable technologies.
You know, it's not just forest fires that are out of control. We see more and more natural disasters in the form of hurricanes. Hurricane Laura is about to hit the Gulf Coast. Ama, how can investors confront this kind of climate change?
Well, there are several things that investors should be looking at. And I would say that this is now gone beyond ESG. This is now looking very much firmly at fiduciary duty, because you're going to be losing money if you're exposed to these areas. So one thing that I would encourage investors to be looking at would be climate change exposure. And we've seen efforts towards that in terms of the recent TCFD, which Michael Bloomberg himself has been a part of. But we've also seen that more mapping has taken place to show where certain areas are repeatedly being hit by these natural disasters. The question really has to be, as an investor, do you want to be involved in or exposed to an area that is constantly being hit by natural disasters and seems to not show any resilience to those natural disasters? And I think the key word there is resilience. Because we've also seen that there are countries out there that have natural disasters but have resilience measures in place. But we're not seeing resilience measures in place here.
Ama. Yeah. Ama, can I ask you about the circular economy? It's something we've talked about with guests a number of times, and you seem to be impressed from what I've been reading with what Nike and Adidas and others in that sports leisure wear market are doing on that front. When you look at companies like that manufacture, though, in emerging markets often, do you ever find that companies in that sector, away from those specific ones, companies in that sector, they might be doing something that's good on the environment, but then they fail to meet your criteria in terms of paying decent wages? I mean, what's the contribution of businesses such as that sector in terms of ESG?
I would say that for us, especially for our sustainability products, we are always looking at continual improvement. So we recognize that there is no such thing as a perfect company. Companies are on an improvement journey. And as long as we see that continual improvement, those are the companies that we want to invest in. So in the case of a company like, for example, Nike, we have seen that continual improvement with efforts being made to clean up their supply chains, efforts being made to make sure that they're being a lot more transparent with how they do business, and also now creating circular goods, such as a shoe that can be taken, worn sent back to the company, and 100% of that shoe is then made into a new shoe. That is revolutionary. These are the things that can really help with regards to solving a lot of our climate and environmental issues.
Yeah, when I look at the fashion industry, my biggest concern, though, is the human trafficking and the labor issues there, Ama. How do you confront those as, important pieces of the S in ESG investing?
They are as important as the E. And I think one of the things that we have been doing very heavily is to not only look at what companies have been doing, but also to speak to companies about where we see issues in their supply chain. So, for example, we have spoken to Nike with regards to supply chain issues in the past, and we will continue to speak to them. We've also been doing a lot of work, especially in the tech industry, with regards to speaking to companies such as Microsoft and Tesla with regards to their exposure to cobalt mining, which again, these companies have shown that they are moving more towards cleaning out those supply chains. I think with supply chain issues, one of the things that we are seeing is that it's not easy for a company to completely mitigate against all of these abuses, because there have been efforts made to actually prevent transparency, even in those countries. And part of that has been that a lot of these countries, for example, the Democratic Republic of Congo, being a key one for cobalt, are afraid that they're going to lose business because companies don't want to be involved in these kind of industries. So what we're now seeing companies saying is, okay, help us to be more transparent. Help us to show to our customers, our investors, that you are doing the right thing. Help us to put in those tools and things in place.